Hello and welcome back to a new Elevate Your Running podcast. This is Coach Sarah. I'm so excited to be here with you today because I have a really special guest. And this guest has been mentioned several times on the podcast before. She is a really good friend of mine. She's also a running coach and she lives in the Denver area. So we have a lot of fun training together. Welcome to the podcast, Coach Merilee.
Hey, it's wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm so excited that this worked out. And you have recently, you're coming back into running from having your second baby. Congratulations on that. That's like a big deal. Two babies in a very short amount of time.
Yes.
And yeah, and it's so exciting to be able to get to run with you again and on our very first run back together this topic that we're talking about today, which is running with confidence in the age of social media, in the age of running influencers. I think in the age of the comparison trap of comparing ourselves to what we're seeing online kind of came up. And it was a combo that we started talking about. We're like, hey, we should actually record this because it could be really beneficial. And I think you're the perfect person to talk about this too, because you have such a level head about everything in life. That's my opinion, but also on this topic. So I think it's going to be a really great topic.
Yeah, I just kind of noticed like taking a step back from running for a bit while I was pregnant and postpartum and then getting back into things. You kind of see things from a different angle. And I just noticed myself feeling like a little sometimes like intimidated by so much of what I was seeing online. And so many of the topics that we're going to talk about came up and I was like, yes, so here we are.
Here we are. Well, before we get into it and jump into the episode, do you mind giving an intro to who you are and when you started running and your running history and all that good stuff that we all love to hear?
I started running really young. Gosh, I want to say doing the Boulder when I was, I think 5 or 6 years old. I should look back on like Athlinks because I think I went in there and like saved my times from when I was a little kid. But grew up in Boulder, so running was just part of culture of daily life. So yeah, grew up with Boulder kind of being a big part of that, and then ran track in middle school and cross country in high school, and then transitioned to coaching high school cross country when I was in college. And then, kind of just, I feel like sometimes those things kind of morph and got more and more into racing and eventually marathoning. And once I met my now husband, we got really, into marathoning together. So that's kind of my running background. And yeah, like you said earlier, I live in Denver, running all over the place down here and sometimes with the double stroller.
Yes, I think we've dubbed it the bus. Is that correct? The
Yes,
bus?
we
Yeah,
call it the big bus.
the
I
big
ran with
bus.
the big bus this morning and I'm still recovering from it.
Yeah, I mean, it's so I know your neighborhood. I know kind of the elevation profile and, pushing the big bus up and down hills is not an easy feat. I would say it's probably I mean, just thinking about pushing a double stroller in general just seems like a lot, yet alone like with all the hills and all the good stuff that you have, but you're getting it done. It's super inspiring to see. And you're feeling good. I think that's also the other piece to the second like postpartum era that you're in is that you're feeling good running, you're listening to your body and everything's kind of clicking the way that you want it to.
Yeah, I've been super lucky this go around. My recovery has felt 100% different than from my first baby. So I'm excited to get back into some light racing this fall and just see where things take me from there.
Yeah, I love it. I think we're participating in a 10K together. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
That's like me dipping my toes in to see how racing feels again. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm so excited about it because we trained for the Boston Marathon 2023 together, here and there, different coaches, but we would try and sync up most Saturdays for our long run. And then we got to run the race together, separately but together. Um, that weekend, and it was super special because your husband was also there racing. I had a big team of athletes there racing, and we coordinated outfits, and we had the infamous pink hat that was a tried and true staple in our racing kits for a very long time. So I believe we are dusting off the pink hat and it's coming back into the run kit rotation. Is that right?
Yes, and fun
Yeah.
fact about that hat, I don't know if I told you this. So my mom had a video of what she thought was me running, and it was a video of you running by. She's like, "Here you are." I was like, "No, that's my friend Sarah."
Yeah.
Great video of
Same.
you.
Yeah, like same outfit, kind of the same hair color. My hair was probably a little bit darker, which is more my natural hair color at the time. And yeah, I mean, we were just a few minutes apart from each other. So I can imagine it threw off anyone that knew both of us, but all good stuff. Those are really good memories. And I think it's one of the things that I love so much about running is like the really good people that you meet in the running community, and also the memories that you can create with these people and races. And there's just so much good. On the flip side, there's also this whole other world out there that we're going to jump into for today. And I think it can be a really dicey situation, and a situation that maybe doesn't build a lot of confidence. It might actually be breaking you down as a runner. And I know specifically as newer runners, I think there's a lot more room for that to sneak in. But also, as you know, Merilee and I have been runners for years and years and years, I know it can still creep in for us, whether we're comparing ourselves with running, training, or even for me in particular, like the business side of what I see on social media. But we're going to talk about how to flow through all these different things with confidence. So we're going to jump right in and kind of talk about like, you know, the landscape of social media and running influencers. So, Merilee, what do you feel like is like helpful versus harmful when you see running advice online? Maybe it's like, what are the red flags and where are the green flags when we're scrolling on social? We are a runner. We follow a ton of running accounts. And a lot of those running accounts are running influencers who could be theoretically a running account that focuses solely on running and running education and having a high number of followers. Where do you kind of see the red and green flags in this kind of like scrolling piece?
I think first off, it's what a great place to be in that running is so popular that we have all of these, online influencers and online presence and just general hype around building the sport. I feel like running is more popular than it's ever been. And that definitely is in huge part to running influencers spreading, their message and their story, which is really cool and fun to follow. I think, some of the green flags that we see in, a true influencer versus someone who's like a sports scientist or, a coach that has, years of experience with certifications, following someone's journey and their documentation of that and, showing the highs and lows. I feel like that truly is a green flag where people show, today's run or today's race didn't go how I had planned. And, really showing the good, bad, and ugly of their journey. I think some of the red flags that we've talked about a lot, where people are posting really high mileage really quickly, or they're doing like 3 marathons in the fall. So things like that, where it might get them really high viewership or a lot of likes, but in reality, it's just not a sustainable or healthy way to go about running.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's kind of like the end of each spectrum, right? If there's something that's just over the top, it seems too good to be true. It probably is, because what we know about, let's use the example for marathons. What we know about marathoning is that if you go through a proper marathon cycle and you race that marathon, even I'm going to argue run the marathon, you run the 26.2 miles, you are still putting your body under an extreme amount of stress. And it's highly unattainable for the masses to be able to do that over and over and over again in a very short window of time. And let's say, for example, it's a Berlin, it's a Chicago, it's a Houston. So Berlin is end of September. Chicago is 2 weeks later. And then we have Houston at the beginning of January. And there isn't much of a turnaround there. And it can be, I think, the comparison trap really comes into play here where you think, well, maybe I should do that. Maybe I should be running 3 marathons in, a quarter of a year or 3 marathons in a year. Maybe I should be doing that. I think anytime we take a look on social and we think maybe I should be doing that, that's the time to step back and think, okay, wait, is this a healthy should I be gelling, every 3, 4 miles on a long run and taking in electrolytes? Yes. Should I be really pushing my body in a way that promotes a lot of injury, promotes a lot of burnout, racing hard efforts in a really short cycle? Possibly not. And I think it's also really important to take a look at those influencers or those accounts because you might not necessarily know that they're influencing you to do something, and see if their posts are paid posts, if there's an agenda behind what they are promoting, because typically typically there's something else kind of behind that.
Absolutely. That definitely made me think of I guess, a rule or guideline that my coach talked about with me when I was doing back to back marathons. And he mentioned, I only like for people to do back to back marathons when the first one goes well. And
Mm-hmm.
because I did Boston and then we did Stockholm. Now, granted, we were doing Stockholm on our honeymoon and we just like jogged it. So it was a little bit of an exception. Like we weren't going out and trying to PR again, but you can really dig yourself into a hole if you've already run a marathon, like some of these influencers have, and then they go out and run another one and you think you're going to do better. So that was a good rule of thumb. And keeping that in mind when you're seeing these influencers doing, like you mentioned, 3 of these fall marathons coming up. Yeah, you only get to do an extra one if your coach approves it, and maybe if your first one went really well.
Yeah, and I think too, it's like, where are you in your stage of training, and what's your training age, and what have you been able to demonstrate that you can do well, that you can do safely? I think in your case of doing the Boston Stockholm, like absolutely, you were in, and both you and your husband were in shape to be able to do both of those, knowing that second one was like, yes, it's hilly, yes, it's international, but we're going to jog it. You learned a lot of great lessons that I know you're going to use for your athletes that you coach in that race and from that race. And there can be a lot of good that comes from it. But I think it's really important to take a step back when you see something so flashy online. Take a step back and really think about, is it something that's really going to serve you? And one of the things that I'm working with all of my athletes is determining their running values. And those are 4 values that align with running and what they want to get out of running and get out of training. And anytime the discussion of goal planning or races or coach, do you think I should do X? We go back to the running values of, does it align with these 4 things that are really, really important to you in this running space? And if it does, amazing. And if it doesn't, let's maybe think a little bit harder or kind of question or just be curious about why it's coming up. Because I think a lot of times we think we need to keep up with the Joneses and we got to be doing all the things. But one of the best things that we can do for ourselves is really lean into what we need to do for ourselves to be able to do what we love to do most, which is running.
Absolutely. These world majors are kind of on this pedestal, and people feel like, I want to do Chicago, I want to do Berlin, I want to do Tokyo. And they don't really realize, like, those races are a whole different animal. And so, like, learning how to race in a different setting, like you said, coming back to your running values, like, if you really want to learn how to negative split on a course, how to run the tangents, how to, have a successful race weekend. Like, gosh, Boston is amazing. The most overwhelming experience I've had of my life. So it's like nail some of those things down in your running values, and then when, then down the line, if you decide that you want to do one of those majors, great, but like learning how to race in that scenario sometimes isn't the greatest. So I love that you've identified those with your runners. I'm going to steal that out of your coach's handbook there.
Yeah. I'll send you all the info on it. Yeah, it's actually something that the athletes really love to do. And I recorded this whole like thing about it and like what they are, how to go through the exercise. So either we do it on a coaching call or they get to listen to it on playback. And then they have homework and they get to figure out what those four things are and define them. And that is a huge piece to coaching for the Elevate team. And anytime I see an athlete start to stray a bit too of what they originally talked about as their goal, usually those values come back into play, and it can be just a really useful tool to kind of get people through, maybe that like season in life that is, tearing down your confidence. Maybe you are looking online. Maybe you are comparing yourself to other people on the team or other people online, and you're just not sure exactly how and what you want to do. So the values are huge. So we're going to take the influencers for the good. There's so much good out there. Like you said, Merilee, it's like, I think they are doing awesome things for the sport. I think running as a whole is booming. It's like really, really popular right now. I think for anyone who is wondering why they can't sign up for the race that they've always signed up for in years past, it's because we're in a running boom and there's so many people racing now, which is so great to see. But I think it's also really important to know who to listen to and maybe who you need to mute or who you need to just take with more of a grain of salt, because they are on their own mission. They're on their own path of putting out content that may or may not align with what you're looking for.
Absolutely. I don't know if you want to give shout outs to like any, I don't even feel like they're influencers. I feel like they're just like really factual, evidence based people that have social media accounts about running, but like Jonah Rosner, I don't
We
see
love
him as an
Jonah.
influencer. I see him as like like a person that I can get information from. Like, yes, he has a, an account and followers and whatnot, but like he's the real deal. Like,
Yeah.
I always point people in his direction. I'm like, if you have a question about, XYZ, like here's his podcast that he talked about it on, or here's, the video that he made. And same with Elizabeth Scott, like all of her stuff is like, she cites her sources. She is super meticulous about all of the things that she publishes. Like that's where people can go like, oh, hey, I want to try this. Great. You go to those two people, you can try anything they've mentioned. Like they are tried and true. They know what they're talking about.
100%. I love both of those people, and they both have been on the podcast. Elizabeth has been on the podcast a few times. Jonah was on the podcast in I think January of this year, and it was so fun talking to him about like the myths in running, like the fads, like what is, that relates to this episode. Like there's so many fads out there right now. What is actually the things, what are the things that are going to be like the needle movers, and what are going to be the things that we can say, yeah, I'm not going to waste my time, energy, and resources on because it doesn't actually move the needle. So that was a great episode. It was probably about 6 months back, and it was a really fun one to record with him. But you're so right. I mean, the science backed information. I think Megan Featherston also does a really great job of communicating like nutrition information. She is a science backed registered dietitian. So it's great to kind of hear what she has to say in the nutrition space and the sodium space right now,
Mm-hmm.
in particular, because I believe the New York Times just ripped sodium and runners apart in an article. And she very quickly got on social to talk about it and the importance of how we still need to have proper levels of sodium when we're running, especially in the summer. And I think, if you are following influencers, it can be too for the entertainment of it all. I think what gets tricky is when we start to compare ourselves to what they're doing or what they have, or they always have a new shoe, or they always have a new kit that they're wearing, or they seem to be able to run whenever they want to, whatever it may be. Or they could be pumping out information or different things that they are doing. For what I know to be true too about meeting some of these people in real life is that it is a bit, I feel like sometimes it can be a bit smoke and mirrors too. But I think that's also social media, right? We post the things that we want to post. We don't necessarily post the hard days or the days that don't work the way that we want them to, or the sad days, or the days that our runs just feel awful, whatever it is. So I think that that's really important too. But kind of sideline or I'm going to segue into another social media platform, which is very specific for runners, Strava. Let's talk about Strava and feeling pressure on Strava. Like, Merilee, what's been like your personal experience as someone who has been a runner most of her life? You have been very successful in the marathon. For a while, we had the exact same race times for the 5K, 10K, half, and marathon, which is so fun. And you are so not done yet, but you've gone through different eras in your running over the last 3 years of coming out running, a huge PR at CIM right before going into Boston, and then getting pregnant with baby one and coming back and then getting pregnant with baby two. And now here we are. And your running is still like, there's still so much there in your running journey and in that destination that you're going. So it's super fun to see. But how do you kind of see Strava, not just as like a runner, but also as a coach, and kind of feeling that pressure that I feel like Strava creates without meaning to create it?
Strava is a great platform. It connects runners in ways that we never could have connected before. I mean, people post stuff on social media, but it's different seeing someone's running route and the hills they ran on, and their heart rate and their cadence and all of that. So it's different, right? Like, it's different, like posting a cutesy picture on Instagram with your mileage versus, the nitty gritty data that you get to see on Strava. So I think Strava has provided us with a lot of information, sometimes for the worse. I've definitely fallen victim to wanting my long run to be a certain round mileage because I know people are going to see it on Strava, or thinking that my easy run needs to be at a certain pace, which is like so counterintuitive because it's an easy run, but you think, oh, well, I need to average this pace because I don't want, my average to look like a 12-minute mile. I want it to look like an 11:30 or something, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And so I've definitely fallen victim to that. I think one of the things that has helped me a lot with that over the years is working with a coach has definitely helped, because they're your sounding board. They're oftentimes the voice of reason when you're thinking everyone else is doing this race, I need to sign up for it, and they're all going to get to post it on Strava. Because those are fun days when you see everybody's races coming in on Strava. That's a blast. And it's so much fun to see everybody doing well, but that's not the reason to do things. So yeah, definitely having a coach as a sounding board has helped me a lot with that. And then actually just kind of educating myself on like what is actually like the scientific process of running. So like
Mm-hmm.
reading Matt Fitzgerald's 80-20 running, that really shifted my mindset of I need to make sure that my easy runs are really easy and I don't want my heart rate to get above this. And then just kind of looking like overall at the well-roundedness of a build. And so then once I kind of understood that, then you start looking at people's runs and you're like, oh gosh, okay, so that person's doing something different than I would be doing. Or I think that's the
Oh,
nicest
yeah.
way. I think that's the nicest way to put it. So you kind of start noticing some trends on there of like, is that person doing what's best for them, or are they doing what's best for Strava? So yeah, those are just kind of some trends that I've noticed with myself with it, but then also what I see other people doing on Strava. I think one of the best things people can do is put their Strava on private if they're feeling pressured. And that can be private where like just your followers can see your runs, but then also you can just hide your runs.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
low key, I would sometimes hide some of my runs when I was like took a sick day from work for a run because I was like worried that someone would find that I went running.
Totally. Totally. It outs you for
It outs you for sure. But yeah, I think, if you're feeling that pressure, it's like go on private or, you can like totally hide your route on there too, where you can just like, you know, post that you went for a run, but then like no one can see your route or no one can see like certain metrics on there. So you can like kind of toggle
yeah.
on and off the things that you want people to be able to see, because if you're feeling pressured to do things in a certain way, then that's a sign, and it's not benefiting you, then that's a sign you need to go into your settings on Strava.
Yeah, and I will say that is one of the neat features of Strava is that they do make it available to personalize it so specific to you and what you need to be successful. Like I've experienced comments about "Well, you can just run whenever you want to run because you don't have a quote unquote real job." And it's like, well, I can run whenever I want, but like also I can't, like my days are still full, they're still busy, and sometimes I'm like cramming in my run to get it done before I need to get to my next meeting or my next athlete call or whatever it may be. So I turned my settings off on my time, the time that I start my run, so no one can see when I'm running. They just see the a very modified route because I have privacy settings on anywhere that I am. So it's not just at home, but if we're running together on the High Line, it's not going to show exactly where we started. And I think that that helps too. But I know that like one example I'm thinking of is a girl that was on I ran with her for a few years. She was on Nell's team. She commented about someone else on her team and the moving time versus um uh, overall time and how much of a difference there was. And it was like a long run or something like that. And so she was like kind of insinuating that this runner was stopping quite a bit and it's a long run and you shouldn't be doing that. And I think that's when the data starts to get a little funky, where maybe you do want to start hiding certain metrics because who knows what happened to that girl on that run. That could have been like she could have had stomach problems. Like we have all been there, right? And like you just don't know. And although it's not really great for this other runner to be talking about it, but like it did come up. So I think it's just being like really open and understanding what's on your Strava account, what is being posted out there, what do you want people to see, and also being okay hiding things. And then on the flip side, something I've done for followers is I created a favorites list. So I see my favorites first, and my favorites are all the people that I love. And it's my friends, it's my family, and it's very often not people who I'm training with. It's not people that I coach. It's not people who are maybe running the same race that I am, but they're all over the country. And that can kind of keep things contained a little bit better, where it's more of a positive experience. I have quite a few followers on Strava, so it just can get really messy. And I absolutely cannot see everyone on like a scroll, but it does kind of control like what you see, what you don't see. And I think one of the things that does come up quite a bit too with athletes, and I guess I'm dabbling in this a little bit because I am signed up for the Chicago Marathon, which is, as of recording, 11 and a half weeks away. And I haven't been running to the extent of training for a marathon. So to see people out there training for Chicago, to see what workouts they're doing, to see where their long run is at, and think, ooh, golly gee, I got a 5 mile run in today, which is the longest run I've had in 3 weeks. I think sometimes that can be really tough when other people are running the same race as you. So just really trying to buffer yourself, give yourself some guardrails, and be okay with that. And it doesn't have to be forever. It can just be for a season. It could be for a training cycle. It could be, like you said, Merilee, putting your Strava on private for a training cycle because maybe you don't want even the pressure that comes from posting some big runs or some big workouts or some big weekly mileage. It's something you and I've talked about quite a bit, and how that pressure from the outside, even though I don't think the outside really it's not their intention to add pressure, it still does add a level or a layer of pressure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Even coming back from, pregnancy running, postpartum running, my running looks really different right now than it did 2 years ago. That's crazy to say that's the last time that I was, you know,
Girl, I know. We
it's
ran
nuts.
together.
But my running looks really different, and I I see that pressure, and like I already know all of the things, so I can't imagine for someone who is maybe joined a Fleet Feet running group, has, found a few people in the group that they follow on Strava, and then they're feeling all of this pressure on there to post longer runs or post faster runs or run a little bit faster in certain splits so that it looks better on Strava. So I can't imagine how that would feel to someone who is just entering the sport or re-entering the sport after some time away, that could feel really intimidating.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Or how many times have we seen like the runners running doubles and thinking, well, okay, if they're running doubles, I need to be running doubles. 400s, great example of 400s. Why did that runner run 2400s? Like, do I need to be running more than 8 or 10? I think it's very, very easy to kind of fall in that space. And that is where like training age and working with a coach, if you're able to do that, really helps neutralize and just like normalize what is appropriate for you as a runner and where you're going in this sport, because it is the long game. It's the longevity game that we are playing. And the last thing we want to do is burn ourselves out mentally or physically because we're trying to do too much too soon based on what we're seeing in social media.
You know, Strava can be a really inclusive environment where you get to see, what all your friends are doing. And by, taking a few measures, you can keep it from being exclusive, where you're just not comparing yourself, or, if you're someone that's going to get caught up in the data of someone else's run, then don't click on their run. Just like their run and move on. You don't need to look at their run data.
I agree. And yet it is so hard to not do that. It is so hard. It is so hard. It's knowing yourself and like knowing, what's going to serve you best. And I think the hardest part is starting, right? That's always true about, I think, most things. But once you can kind of get into a pattern, get into a routine, maybe you're not scrolling on Strava, maybe you're posting, maybe you're updating with like, a funny title or a creative title or something like that. And then you just get off, or you have a list of favorites and you go in and give kudos to your family, your friends, and people that you want to support on there, and then get off and live life, get off the screen.
You know what else I've seen some people do on Strava that want to track it for mileage and effort and things, is they will just record on their watch, but they'll have it like disconnected from their Strava, and then they'll just enter in whatever their mileage and pace was manually, and it'll just show like the distance and the pace on their run. Because I like to look back and see like, okay, what was I doing in this training cycle, or whatnot, and just kind of looking at that
Oh,
type of
yeah.
stuff. But it kind of removes I think, kind of some of the nosiness of Strava.
Well, yeah, like all of the data, all the things that we were just talking about with like moving time versus actual time and things like that. Cause I know I've even like, I've ended a run and I'm like, oh, I got to quickly save this. I can't like let it sit for 20 minutes and then save. Someone might think I was, out there talking to someone for 20 minutes, or what was she doing? Why is the time so different between moving and actual? It's pretty wild where our minds can go. But I think that that's a great point of manually entering everything in. I know a lot of pros keep their runs on private. Clayton Young's been really open about how he loves to use Strava for himself. And I love his approach. And I am on repeat with this, but it is a you versus you mentality with Clayton. And in one of his last YouTube videos before going into Boston, he had a very specific workout, and it was something that he wanted to feel really confident going into. And he had looked back on Strava to see exactly the splits that he hit in the last time that he ran this workout. So he went into the workout going, okay, I want to hit at least this time. And to me, it's going to show me that I'm at least in the same fitness that I was for the last build. And then he ended up running a few seconds faster for each interval. And it created so much confidence as he went into Boston. And then he ended up running one heck of a 21-mile race. And he still finished extremely well. He got a personal best. There were so many great things that came from that day for him. So I think it's really understanding, the platforms too, and what you can get from it, what's going to help you succeed and soar, and then also maybe hide or unfollow the things that really aren't going to serve you. let's
Absolutely.
talk, let's talk about confidence and how we can build this internal confidence within ourselves. I had shared about the running values and how that is something that I really like all my athletes to do when they're onboarded. And then typically within like a year, teen months, we might revisit it to see, have things changed? Has your outlook on training, your outlook on racing, your outlook on distances and road versus trail, has any of that changed? Because if it has, we need to reassess values. But it's very similar to defining the why, the running why. Why do we lace up our shoes? Why do we get out there on those days where maybe it's like 10 degrees and snowing and we're thinking, what? And I know you had a lot of early morning runs in your CIM Boston build. And, those can be some of the toughest runs to get out the door for, but reconnecting with your why, defining it, writing it down, having it there. If you're working with a coach, making sure your coach knows your why, and then also having those running values, I think is going to be a great way to reconnect with yourself when things start to go maybe a little sideways online. Because something to, I think, really remember throughout this entire process is that just because you're going to say you're unfollowing people or you're muting people doesn't necessarily mean that you're not still seeing their stuff. And so it's not a linear process. It can be very nonlinear. So you have to give yourself grace with that. But reconnecting, I think, is really important when you see maybe something happening and you see yourself kind of going into that negative space.
Yeah, really, so much of what you said ties into like, what's your bigger picture with running? And thinking about that in the context of when you see just this kind of like race weekend vomit of stuff that comes out. I feel like sometimes it is that way where it's just like so much content of Berlin Marathon or so much content of Chicago Marathon. And it's exciting and it's so fun to see what people are doing. But it's, you don't want to get caught up in, well, this person PR'd and they said they did this, so I must need to be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Really, like,
Yeah.
what's your bigger picture? And like you said, connecting, whether that's like journaling that you just do with yourself, whether you're working with a coach online or you work with a coach in person, or maybe you follow a training plan that you've purchased online, but you work with a dietitian. It's like, where are you connecting kind of some of those pieces of, gosh, looks like Chicago Marathon was a fantastic weekend. I saw these people doing this. I really need to think of like, how did those things that I attracted to that they're doing align with my bigger picture of wanting to do X race, X year? I think that is a tough place to get to as a runner because there's just so much information on social media that it's like easy to get caught up in the moment. Whereas it's like, just redefine your why, look at the bigger picture.
Well, 100%. Like there's one part of like, the algorithm is pushing all that content, right? It's like all these people are running Berlin, all these people are running Chicago. So probably every person you follow who is running those races, you're getting that content that weekend. Like the algorithm is pushing it to your page. And I think we can get really caught up in that and be like, well, wait, I want to do that next year too. But like maybe you have other goals, maybe you have other plans, maybe a marathon isn't right for you next year because you're going to be traveling a lot for work or you are moving or there's other things coming up. So I think, like you said, it's really, really important to take a step back. And although it's very, very exciting, take a step back and really listen to like what's going to serve you best. And that kind of lends itself into also trusting your body and trusting your coach, which is the second piece under internal confidence building. Like trusting your body, learning the cues. What is normal? What is not normal? What feels good? What doesn't feel good? And knowing that rule of thirds apply in running. A third of your runs are going to feel great. A third of your runs are going to feel good. And a third of your runs aren't. And that's just a matter of fact. It's a very nonlinear process in when we're training and when we're running. But over time, we can develop the understanding of my knee's a little sore after this run. Why is that? Is it sharp shooting? Did it happen during the run? Was it after the run? Is it more dull? Do I just need to stretch? Maybe I need to foam roll because I'm really bad at that. Like, there's so many things that can come up. So it's like understanding your body signals, I think, too, is really, really important over what everyone else is doing. Cause like right now, I am in this mindset of as much as I want to run Chicago, I don't, I'm taking it day by day. And I can't say that I'm going. And I can't say that I'm not going, but I am just taking it every day versus like thinking about all the great people who are going to be running it and how I want to be running with them that day. Merilee's husband's running it. And it was also my job to get him into the corral on time this year. So I have that in the back of my mind. But like I have a lot of Elevate athletes. I think we have a nice dozen going and like wanting to be there for them and supporting them. And then taking a step back and saying, okay, but I also have to do what's right for me and what's right for my body and not just with my foot, but also the stress that I have in life right now and balancing everything to make sure I'm not stressing myself out too much with training and then something really bad happens, which is what I'm actually really afraid about and taking it day by day. And so it's okay to do that. It's I think it's great to just take that step back, listen to your body, know where you're at and be okay saying like that race or that thing will always be there. It's going to be the shiny thing up ahead and I'll eventually get there, but my path is going to look different than your path and everyone else's path.
Yeah, that just made me think about like running and races will always be there if you want it, if you want
Yeah.
to get back to it. But rushing the process or, kind of digging yourself into a hole with an injury because you're trying to do something that you shouldn't be doing, that's it's going to take that away from you. And so again, like coming back to your why and looking at, what's your goal with running overall and knowing that it's going to be there even if you are sidelined for 6 months, a year, 2 years because you had two babies. So like running is always going to be there if you want to come back to it. And so not feeling that pressure of like having to try and cram everything in because that's the narrative that we sometimes see on social media or Strava or even just with people that we know in running circles.
Absolutely. And I think like my mind goes to an athlete who was so dead set on running all the majors. And it just became this domino effect of like she got into one and then BQ'd, but then she got into like a really hard one to get into. And they were all kind of condensed into this very short period of time. and she ended up burning out. She was like, this isn't fun anymore. I'm not even excited to go run these races. And that is like one of the hardest places to be, because if these are like things that you really want to do, you want to be able to go into race weekend feeling excited and go into training feeling excited, and that you're getting the endorphins, you're getting the training, you're getting the connection, the community, all those good things. So it is really important to trust yourself, trust your body, trust your coach if you're working with one, and knowing that they have your best interests at heart. They're not just going to let you, I think most coaches wouldn't let you just race whatever you wanted to do or do whatever you wanted to do. You know, there's going to be some guidelines there. But I think like another way to really build some confidence is celebrating your wins, celebrating your victories, your small wins, your big wins. So small could be like process goals, it could be the day to day, getting out the door, maybe taking that easy run, truly easy. Maybe it's logging your run on Strava and getting off and not comparing yourself to anyone. It can be as small as that. And the big wins could be having a great race and not comparing your race time or your race weekend to anyone else that's out there and what they're doing. I think that's really huge. We call those elevated moments here in the Elevate Your Running world. And it's really fun. And one of the things that I really loved about bringing those elevated moments to life with the team is, you know, sometimes I'd get pushback and people would say, like, I don't have anything. And I said, no, everyone has something. And if we can train the mind to go there every workout day, so once a week, or every long run once a week, or maybe it's twice a week, you do start to build that confidence that, okay, even though the run wasn't perfect, because there's never going to be a perfect run, there is going to be something good in that run. And I'm going to focus on that and carry it with me to the next day.
I always ask my athletes after any distance of a race or a time trial that they do, how are you planning to celebrate, regardless of their performance? Because you just raced, you just did a really hard effort. And it's so important to celebrate the fact that you put the whole process together and then you're finally at race day. Sometimes the outcome isn't what we wanted, but it's like you have to celebrate the fact that you got to the finish line, literally. So I think that like those little moments, whether that's like, oh, hey, we're going to go grab an ice cream cone or we're going to go, to my favorite taco spot. Those little moments help kind of build your confidence of like, you know, not every race is going to go my way, but I know that I kind of have a way of like pumping myself up, giving myself a little treat in the end for like, regardless of the outcome.
Absolutely. And I think there's been times where I've had like, you know, definitely not the outcome I've wanted in marathons, but it's like being proud of the training cycle and knowing like you're still fit, you still created a lot of fitness, and sometimes it just doesn't land on that day. And it's okay. But I think it's so important to celebrate at the end of a training cycle. Last year for Indy, I was like, I'm going to celebrate starting taper. Like, this feels amazing. I'm so excited I'm here. And then, you know, post race and being able to share that with other people is a lot of fun too. And of course, with athletes that I coach, you know, just like the group of people in your life can be a lot of fun too. And that leads me to like also making sure that you recognize yourself for like non-performance based achievements, I think is huge too. Like, you know, I'm a big believer in like establishing process goals for training cycles. And if we can say like, oh my gosh, yes, these two process goals, let's say it was like carrying a handheld on long runs and hydrating. And then also like, I'm going to pull one of mine, like staying focused during workouts to like hit the pace and just stay really focused on what I'm doing. If you can say like, I did that, I did it really well, I executed it, that's a huge win, because if we fall in love with the process, the outcome is going to happen. It's just a matter of time. I think sometimes it gets flip flopped. And I know for myself personally, it can get flip flopped.
Yeah, I feel like, putting the whole training process together and then executing in races is sometimes, I don't know if this is the best way to say it, but sometimes it's a numbers game because you're not going to PR at every race. You're not going to
Right.
have, you're not going to have a race that feels really good. I mean, I don't know what marathon has ever felt good.
No, I think there's like the days where you're like, I feel good
I
enough.
feel good enough.
Yeah. And then there's just the days that are hard and you kind of have to decide like, am I going to push through the hard or am I just not? And either way is fine, right? It just depends on the athlete and what they want to do.
Yeah. But yeah, like really just realizing that like, part of kind of the stacking races and stacking training cycles, it is a bit of a numbers game of like you will get the outcomes that you want if you keep stacking cycles and celebrating your small wins and building up your like kind of community of people that support you. Like those are all of the things that you put in place to help yourself get those big wins when they do come. It's like you can't get a big win
Yeah.
if you don't have small ones along the way. Like race day magic doesn't happen unless you've like kind of stocked some magic in a bag the whole training cycle
Yeah.
after training cycle. Like it doesn't just come out of nowhere.
Yeah, I call it training deposits with the team. I say like if they have a good workout or a good week, I'm like, "Oh, you just made a really healthy or hearty or, awesome training deposit and we're going to cash in on race day." And that's kind of like the idea of like these small things that we're doing. The athlete might not see them as something that's magical or moving the needle because maybe they kind of felt like it was a B workout or a B day, but it's actually all those days stacked up that's going to be giving them the best case scenario to cash in, and take a withdrawal from that bank and see what happens.
Absolutely. Yeah, you
Yeah.
can't withdraw more than you don't want to go into the negative. You can't go into the negative if you don't have the training stocked up in your training bank account.
No, no. And so it doesn't work that way in
It doesn't
running. You
work
can
that
only
way.
take out
People
what you
want it
put in.
to. That's what social media makes it look like sometimes of like, oh, you can just like whip out a marathon. It's like you can't do that.
I know, I know. And I think the other part of that is like we don't really see follow-up from those runners either. So like what is the recovery process like? Are they injured? It's like you just get this quick snapshot and then you just assume all is well, all is good, but that's probably not going to be the case, especially if they're just jumping in to run halves or marathons and you see them racing pretty frequently in those long distance events that can create a lot of intensity and just too much too soon for that athlete to be able to continue to run healthy and happy. Let's quickly talk about practical strategies for navigating social media. So, we talked a little bit about these at the beginning of the episode, but I think, like, first and foremost, like mindful consumption, like maybe it's setting a time limit, which I know Instagram has for their app. Although I have used it in the past, and it's basically like you get a pop up that says your 20 minutes for the day is over, and you can very quickly hit dismiss and keep scrolling. It's like, it doesn't real I mean, you have to be very disciplined for that to work. But something that's really helped me lately over the last few weeks is having like a no phone zone. So when I've been going on walks with my dog, I've been leaving my phone at home. Or if I'm watching a TV show or if I'm journaling, my phone is nowhere near me. And I think that that helps quite a bit. So I don't get distracted or want to distract myself and jump on social media. And then if you're already kind of in a vulnerable place and then you're jumping on social media, it's probably not going to work out the way that you want it to. It's probably just going to like further develop these feelings of comparison and not feeling enough.
Yeah, a no phone zone is very helpful. I'm trying to be mindful of that with little kids that want to look at screens and not wanting them to get screen time and not wanting them to see
Yeah.
you having screen time. So if you have kids, that's a great excuse to have a no phone zone. It's like,
Yeah.
they do what they see is modeled. So yeah, having a no phone zone is great. Or even like the couch rot after a long run, like maybe set a time limit on that because I feel like sometimes that's where like maybe your long run didn't go the greatest way and then you see on social media and Strava that other people's long run went drastically different than yours. So it's like maybe set a time limit on that.
Oh, 100%. I had a 20 it was like a 22-mile long run last build for Indianapolis, and there was 16 miles of like this moderate pace. Now, this is a very advanced long run. Just I'm saying that right now. And it went awful. I felt awful from the start. The entire 22 miles was an absolute grind. And I was running it with Jenna, and many of you know Jenna from the podcast. The next day, I mean, that run took it out of us. And the next day, we were out and about getting coffee and just like, we were just out of it. And I think a lot of it had to do with like the heat of the weekend and stuff and electrolyte imbalance. But, anyways, we ran into a few people who were like, oh my gosh, you had one heck of a long run yesterday. And I turned to Jenna and I was like, we literally didn't do a great job communicating how bad this one was, because people also want to see what they want to see. So I think that that's kind of a piece to it too. But it's knowing that, it's knowing there's always going to be something that isn't being said or maybe isn't being communicated the right way. I think unfollowing or muting accounts is a great way to really make sure that you're not triggering any negative feelings or you're seeing things that just aren't helpful for you and your mental health in this stage in your running journey.
I've definitely unfollowed certain accounts because it wasn't helping my confidence as a runner. It wasn't
Yeah.
it wasn't helping my training cycle. And I always think like if this isn't helping me, then this certainly isn't helping people that I'm coaching or other people that I'm following, because I feel like the algorithm just kind of pushes all sorts of things to us. And so I've certainly unfollowed thinking in that context too of like, well, my friends are going to get this as a suggestion, so I want to unfollow it because I don't want them to see this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think it's like knowing what's really triggering you and what's not, and it's okay. It can just be for a season. And then I think what's also really cool is like actively seeking out like diverse accounts or diverse different things other than running, which is something I've been trying to do on Instagram. I even created a new like handle to maybe like curate a different page that had nothing to do with running. And what I know to be true, like the easiest way to do this, like in my experience with Instagram, is if you want to keep the same account, but maybe you want to have a different vibe on that account because it is an algorithm based system, is like just liking a lot of other things and commenting on a lot of other things. So, for example, last winter, when Taylor Swift was in the midst of her Eras tour and the Chiefs were in playoffs and there was just a lot of Taylor and Travis, I was liking a lot of content. And one day I went to like my search tool on Instagram and the entire page was filled with Taylor Swift. And I was like, this is joy. And this is coming from a running coach who has, it's literally all running and it can be very overwhelming at times. And I'm like, this is beautiful. It's all joy and goodness. So like there are ways to be able to kind of diverse either running voices or um, totally different ways and people and places and experiences. So you get something a little bit different on your page if you're looking for that.
I have two separate accounts. One is running, one is
You do.
personal life, parenting, teacher stuff. And it's nice to be able to toggle between the two because it's like once I kind of click to the other account, I'm like, oh, okay, I don't have to like think about that stuff anymore. So
Yeah. And we talked about that, I think, the last time we were together, and just like, I have Elevate, I have Sarah Runs Happy, and then I created this third account, which just seems excessive. But it's also kind of necessary because Elevate is the branded Instagram. Sarah Runs Happy is the runner, Sarah. But like, what about me as a human and everything else that I like outside of running? So it's huge. So if you are someone who has a running account or someone who only sees a lot of running content, maybe creating that second account or just going in and liking a whole bunch of Taylor Swift or whatever fills your cup, and you'll get more of it. We're both coaches, Merilee. So like how can coaches help runners kind of build that trust in their own training, or what's kind of like your final like maybe your final like tidbit of coaching that you want to give runners on how to kind of flow through this so they can have that joy, they can have that running can be a safe space for them, it can be a positive experience for them.
I think coming back to the question of how did that run feel? And I ask this
Yeah.
on every quality session and every long run, or whether the long run has quality in it, of like, how did this run feel? Don't even look at the data. How did this run feel to you? And I've had some athletes be like, well, this, it felt a lot harder than the suggested paces, or it felt a lot easier than the suggested paces. I was like, okay, but was the effort there? Do you feel really drained? Did you feel like, really strong and powerful at the end? And so I think if you can come back and ask yourself that question, even at the end of an easy run, how did that feel? Did it feel really hard? Maybe it was an easy run, or maybe it was a really hot day. Who knows? Not easy. Every easy run's going to feel easy. That's going to happen. But bringing yourself back to that question, I think helps you put little deposits, like you said,
Yeah.
into your running bank account of, I want my runs to generally be feeling pretty good. If they're all feeling pretty junky, then I'm not putting enough into the bank. I'm not building enough towards my bigger picture. Even when you're consuming stuff online, how did it feel after scrolling for 20 minutes of watching everybody at Berlin when you just had, you just sprained your ankle and you can't run? Is that beneficial for you
Yeah.
right now? No. So coming back to that question of how did that feel, and really, tuning that into, how is that feeling for, this training cycle, the upcoming training cycles. Maybe your goal is to qualify for Boston in 2 years. Like, I know it seems silly to think that far ahead, but it's like, if you're not making those deposits now and reflecting now, like, you're not going to get there if you're not making those changes or those decisions now. So that's something that, I ask my athletes to do with their running. I ask myself that just in kind of my comeback to running of like, how did that run feel? It felt a little hard today. Maybe I should go a little bit easier on it next time, maybe not bring the stroller. That might make things a little easier, but just those little
The big
things of like,
bus.
yeah, that felt a little harder than it should have. Like, that's not building my aerobic base. That's not helping me. So just really using that reflective tool, and you're going to reach your goals. You are.
Yeah, and it's never going to be when we want it to be and when we want it to happen. And I think it's just really important to know that every single one of us is on a very different run journey. I mentioned earlier in the podcast that Merilee and I had the exact same race times across the board, and yet the way we got there was in two totally different fashions. And I think that's what's so cool about running, is that we can each show up individually, be true to ourselves, do what feels good, and we can still get to that destination. It may not be the way we want to get there, it may not be the amount of time that we want to invest in it, but we will eventually get there if we're patient. And I'd love for you to quickly share too, Merilee, the running or the race kit or the training kit idea that you threw up on social media last week. Do you want to share more about this? Like, this is like run tip 101 slash the best tip I've heard in a really long time.
Oh, is this about like going, like finding stuff like consignment?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I feel like I have been consuming a lot of just running apparel content lately. And it's so fun to see all the new styles. Like, there's some really stylish new stuff out there that has like cool pockets on it and this and that. Like, don't get me wrong, that stuff is cool.
It is.
And I'm in a place where my body is transforming. I'm postpartum. My body is changing. But I also want running clothes that feel good on me. I don't want to try and squeeze into my old running clothes right now. They don't feel great. I was like, you know what? I need to get some new stuff. I didn't feel like dropping $400 on new stuff from, Bandit or Lululemon or Tracksmith. So I went to, there's a place in Denver called the Yogi Collective, and they have just like all athletic consignment. And I found a ton of stuff there that fit me and it felt great. And I've also found a ton of stuff on Poshmark. There's like a ton of Tracksmith stuff on there. Like, I was like, I am going there for my
Mm-hmm.
next race kit for sure. So that was a great place to go because I feel the pressure for every race that you do, that it's like you need to have this new fit. And I don't think anyone else is feeling that you need to have it, but I feel like because of the content that is consumed, there's this pressure of this new crop top that's out or the new colorway that's out. And
Mm-hmm.
there's so many places in running to put your money, like your shoes that matter,
Yeah. Shoes are
or
important.
a high quality coach or really good fuel. But running gear, I feel that isn't one of the places that is making a high leverage next step in your running journey. And so there's a lot of places that you can get stuff that's either like discounted, like Marshalls and TJ Maxx have great stuff.
Yeah.
All of the consignment places have great stuff. And that's not to say that for, maybe there's a huge race that you've been training for and put all of the deposits in and you want to treat yourself. How are you going to celebrate your training cycle? Maybe you do buy a new race outfit, but what you don't need to do is buy, the 5 outfits that you see an influencer post of like their Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday runs of like, gosh, that's a lot of running gear to be buying. So just
It
finding
is.
what you feel good running in, realizing you don't need to break the bank on it. And there's a ton of really good stuff that you probably like can just buy online that's the same, like at a consignment place like Poshmark. You're probably going to find the same stuff there that you will on the Tracksmith website. Maybe it's just like a different color from last season. So
Yeah.
don't
I
break the
mean, same
bank.
with Lululemon.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, like Lululemon doesn't change. Like it's just different colorways. And I have like a big bin in my closet right now that like needs to be listed on Poshmark. I just haven't made the time to do it or maybe drop it off at Yogi Exchange. And I think that's like the other side of this is if you have stuff that you're maybe not wearing and it's something that you think, oh, it's still cute, but maybe it doesn't fit right now, or it's just not my particular style, whatever it may be, like consider donating it or putting it on consignment for other people to be able to enjoy it. And I am sometimes I'll buy like a new race kit for sure, but then I usually will use it for like the entire season. It's kind of like the pros. At the start of their season, it's one kit and you just see me racing in that kit for, all the 5K, 10Ks, whatever. But those Tracksmith shorts are like a tried and true staple. They're good. Thank you so much for your time, Merilee. I really appreciate your time. I know you don't have a lot of it right now with 2 small children. So I really appreciate it. I'm so excited to run with you soon. But if our audience is looking to connect with you online, where can they find you?
Ironically, the easiest place to find me is on Instagram.
That's
You
so
can
good.
find me on
I
social
was
media.
not even thinking about that.
You can find me on
But
social media. My
Merilee
handle,
posts great
yeah.
content.
Oh, I'm trying to post more. It's hard when you got 2 littles, and then I'm trying not to be on my phone around them. So, yeah, my handle is Lazy Dog Running, affectionately named after our first dog that we had. So if you're wondering why is she, it sounds like the restaurant or whatever, the Lazy Dog restaurant now. So yeah, Lazy Dog Running and all the links and stuff are on there. But yeah, and I am on Strava, but I'm super private. So if you're a person that I don't know that requests, I'm not gonna, yeah, you're not gonna see my runs.
Yeah, good for you. I love it. Thank you so much for your time today. And thanks everyone for listening. And I'll see you again next week.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Have a great rest of your